Welcome back. We are back, and we are so excited to be back with the fabulous Bonnie Yates. She is a special education attorney extraordinaire. Looking sharp, Bonnie, and we're thrilled to have her on a regular basis. And Bonnie comes to us from the law firm of Hirji & Chow. So, Bonnie, welcome back. And can you tell the folks a little bit about Hirji & Chow and give the disclaimer, please?
I can tell everybody a little bit about Hirji & Chow. Thank you for having me back. Welcome to the heart of IEP season.
Yeah.
Hirji & Chow is a special education and disability discrimination law firm. We also do regional center and disability discrimination claims. We're located in Culver City. Our phone number is 310-391-0330, and our website is www.lawyer4, so lawyer4children.com. The disclaimer is we're giving you general information about your rights under California and federal law. It's not specific information particular to your legal rights in a given situation. So if you have a specific legal problem, you can certainly ask about it here over the air, but ultimately that would not be a substitute for a consultation with a licensed attorney. And we refer you to www.copaa.net for a list of special ed attorneys in the 50 states.
Fabulous. That was wonderful.
Okay.
And so we do have some questions, but we want to continue on with talking with LRE. And I've got the questions here. Shall I read the first one?
Yeah, you can read them, and I'm ready to respond to all the questions.
You're not
So
going to?
No, I am.
Okay.
So the first question is essentially a charter school question,
Okay.
right? You want to read the question?
Yes. It is, I'm being told that if I put my child in a charter school, they won't be able to have an IEP. The charter school is in LAUSD. Do you know if that is true? And if it is, what happens to my child's goals and accommodations? Do we get something else?
Okay, so charter schools are their own unique animal, and each school has its own charter, and different schools are chartered by different school districts. With that, and I mean, one of the big issues with charters and sort of the semi-privatization of them, in my experience, there have been two issues that have been frequent with charter schools. One is that you tend to get an elected board in there, and then sometimes their interests are not the same as the interests of the larger school. It can be like a power base for launching yourself into some other political career. But that said, the other issue with charter schools is no unions. Some people don't like unions. I happen to think that the teachers union in our public schools is an important thing to have. But as far as IDEA goes, if you take your IEP to a charter school, the charter school gets the same federal money as the other public schools do, and so they are required to abide by IDEA. Sometimes when you get to a charter school, there's not a lot of awareness about special education in the IEP process. That can be a good thing because sometimes they're actually a lot less hostile, but they also typically will tell parents, we don't have to do any of this, and then you have to educate them. But you should have all of the same rights under the IDEA at a charter school as you do in a regular public school. There are, of course, some more nuanced situations that come up in particular charters, but that the general rule is if somebody's telling you go away, you can't come here because you have an IEP, that's wrong, wrong, wrong.
Okay. Next question. My child has been struggling in school for 3 years. No one ever said anything about autism. Now they are telling us we should get him tested and maybe he goes to a special school. They tell me kinder teacher had recommended this, but no one told me. How can they do this? I don't trust them, but I want what is best for my child. What can I do now?
Okay, so when I read this question, I wrote down next to the question, child find and hiding things. So preliminarily, I can't tell whether this person was in the public school before kindergarten, but I guess she wouldn't have been if she doesn't have an IEP. So maybe she's now in third grade or something, third or fourth grade. In all kinds of situations, in public school, parents are the last to know. I had one this week where a student got in a fight with another student. He's a second grader. The only reason his mom found out anything is because he told his mom. I sent an expert to a school observation. The kid had a complete and total meltdown right before the observation. The classroom teacher didn't say anything about this to the psychologist doing the observation. Mom only found out because her child's aide told her about it. So the problem is that there are many, many issues that public school officials have to deal with every day at school, and I think there's sort of a culture of the less we tell parents about what's going on, the less work we have for ourselves. So that's just a general observation. It's not even what I mean to say about the child find. But what I mean to say about the child find is that under the IDEA, districts need to search out and serve children within their geographical boundaries that have disabilities. And so in this case, somebody obviously missed the boat. If you're getting diagnosed with autism at age 7 or 8, the district is going to be liable for 2 years, which is the statute of limitations in California, of compensatory education, because autism isn't something, autism isn't a mushroom, like it rains one day and you sprout out of a log. Autism is something that is diagnosable, at birth or after birth, or certainly by the 3rd birthday. So the district blew it, and you need to get a lawyer because they're going to owe you a bunch of services. And what was the rest of the question?
Well, what can I do now? And so getting a lawyer and getting a bunch of services to help the child get caught up.
I mean, I didn't hear the person saying that she had an assessment. So the other thing I would have her do, if her insurance will provide for it, is to get the diagnosis of autism confirmed.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a whole world of things that you have to do. You have to educate yourself about autism, and an organization like CARD has many, many resources up at its website for how you educate yourself about autism. There's an old book that I like. It was given to me when I was just learning about autism. It's called Let Me Hear Your Voice. It is written under a pseudonym. It's about a woman that had 2 children with autism and her foray into the world of behavior intervention and triaging her children. I believe Doreen Grant-Pichet is in the book as a young student who was coming up the ranks, about to do something amazing in the field of autism. So even though it's an old book, I think it provides a lot of context. And I think you have to be careful if your child's just getting a diagnosis of autism, because there's so much information out there. You really need help figuring out what to pay attention to. So that's why I think the website that CARD has with Skills Live and some of the other things that you've made available to people is huge, because it's good information, not bad information. So you have to deal with the school, and you have to deal with the school from the vantage point of making sure that you're asking for a research-based appropriate intervention by a trained team, as opposed to what the school district will just throw at you if you're not informed. So there's a lot of money on the line for you, and you're not going to be able to exploit your situation optimally unless you're represented, so you need to get a lawyer.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the next question. Can you tell me what accommodations to ask for a high school student with high-functioning autism who's only been homeschooled and will now go to public high school? He needs help with planning.
Okay. I jotted some things down.
Okay.
General things that I think would be good. They're not a substitute for, having a specific professional that works with your child to give you more kind of particularized ideas, but here's some things that I think could help. It's important for the routine to be predictable and not too complicated. That becomes important when somebody's moving around from classroom to classroom, which I think might be happening if this is a high-functioning student who's in general ed for his school day or parts of his school day. So you need a predictable routine. You probably need a visual schedule, or you may need a visual schedule. And at transitions, whether they're from class to class or end of day or beginning of day or whatever, probably priming for the transitions would be helpful, potentially from the teacher. Maybe extra time on tests, maybe taking your test in a separate room, maybe preferential seating. The questions there would be, do you need to sit near the teacher? Do you need to sit somewhere where it's quiet? Do you need to sit near a particular peer? But issues of seating, that would be an appropriate accommodation. What kind of visual supports do you need? Do you need a graphic organizer? Do you need a content or curriculum outline? Do you need graph paper for math? Do you need manipulatives for math? Do you need modeling for math? Do you need individual or small group instruction within the larger classroom? Do you need to be given accommodations in terms of different ways you could respond to requested information? Sometimes you might respond orally, sometimes you might respond in writing, those kinds of things. Do you need your materials highlighted to focus on the main points or the main task? Do you need a note taker? Do you need assistive technology? Do you need large print? Some students have trouble transferring information from like the test page to the Scantron bubble page. Do you need an accommodation that says you can write your answers directly on the test page so you don't have to transfer it? You probably need reinforcers to encourage you to keep trying really hard. So you need a reinforcer assessment to figure out what reinforcers work for you, and then you need a reinforcement system that can be implemented as part of a behavior support plan. You need study guides. And I want to point out that modifications are different from accommodations. The writer in of the question asked for accommodations. I don't know whether she really meant accommodations and modifications or just accommodations, but modifications are different. They actually involve changing the curriculum to make it more accessible for someone. So do you need your materials adapted? Do you need a lower reading level? Do you need testing adaptations? We talked about that with the Scantron form. Do you need a reduction of class time assignments or homework assignments so you're getting fewer problems? Do you need an alternate curriculum so that actually you're doing modified work that's less difficult? Do you need a system of pass-fail grading based on work completion rather than grades based on test taking and work completion? So those were some of the ideas for accommodations for high-functioning high school students with disabilities.
That's a great
high-functioning autism.
That's a great list. We should type that up. I might put on somebody on that. Okay, and then the last question, and then we'll have a few minutes to talk about LRE. Can you ask Bonnie, what do you do when the principal tells you at the IEP that your child has to go to a school 1 hour away because they don't have a program for your child at his school? My son is about to start kindergarten and he went to a mainstream preschool. How can he say he has no program?
Okay. A general comment for you, ladies and gentlemen, when you're writing in, is to try to give me a few more facts.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm guessing a little bit. So I don't know where you live. I don't know if you live in a rural area. I don't know that. But what I do know is your child was in a general ed preschool. And so the presumption in the law, which just kind of nicely folds into our discussion about least restrictive environment, is the presumption is that you would go to kindergarten in general ed. The presumption is that if you had support in the form of ABA therapy in your preschool, that would follow you into kindergarten. I can't imagine why the principal says there's no general education kindergarten available for the student at the school. Sounds like he's trying to force the kid out because he doesn't want to have to budget for the student's disability-related expenses. And so you probably belong there, and you probably need a lawyer who's going to be able to advocate for you at the IEP. The question with placements that are far away, we've covered it a little bit on this show before, but the question is, when is a placement or a transportation route or something so far away that it becomes a denial of faith? And the answer to that is it's looked at on a case-by-case basis. So, if you are living in Los Angeles and you're being asked to trek out an hour away for school and it's not your choice to do so, that's probably going to get scrutinized in a different way than if you live in the Central Valley where people live in rural areas and the distances between things are greater. But that's not really your question. Your question is really a denial of the least restrictive environment. Why can't your son go to kindergarten at his home school, just the way other students do. Right?
So, and that does dovetail into where do we pick it up with LRE?
All right, so
And
here's where we pick up with LRE.
Just so you know, we've got about 4 minutes.
All right. So we've been talking about the law related to least restrictive environment and the presumption, particularly for a young person who's just starting school, that he's going to be able to be educated with his normal peers with supplementary aids and services. That's essentially what the Lovas model was, as I was taught it. You put your child in a preschool, a normal preschool, so he can model, appropriate behavior and language from typical peers, and he, of course, has to have intensive ABA support for the entire time he's there. And so for this child in the last question, the law would say that when trying to figure out what the least restrictive environment for him would be, you look at what he's done last. And I just went to an IEP like this last Friday where the child was in a private preschool. He had his ABA funded through his insurance. He was making progress in the preschool, but the preschool teacher and the BCBA who supervised his case both came to the IEP and said, he's making progress in the general ed, but there's no way he could do this if you take his aid away. That's essentially the situation that I think the listener or the writer-inner of the last question is dealing with. And so the burden would be on the district to prove that least restrictive environment is something else, and the fact that it's so far away is a consideration. It sounded as if the parent hasn't visited the placement yet, and so you don't know what's being offered instead. But anyway, the law's on your side, and last week I sent Shannon an outline or actually a chapter from Special Education Rights and Responsibilities, which deals with least restrictive environment, so that you can, comprehensively learn about it. But where we left off was talking about the balancing of factors that need to occur to determine whether or not a student with disabilities is allowed to be educated in the general ed setting with supplementary aids and supports. And as you can imagine, districts haven't liked this idea, so they've come up with rationales for why it shouldn't be permitted, which is wrong. But one of the rationales was disruption to the teacher. And the case law says, just the fact that the teacher needs to spend extra time with the student, that in and of itself doesn't prove that it's an undue burden. So then they said, well, we're concerned because the student's not getting substantial educational benefit. They should be in a special day class. The law on that point is also clear. They need to get some educational benefit. It doesn't have to be substantial educational benefit, because in the early years, kindergarten through third, the law looks at social development and exposure to typical peers as being so important that educational progress for a while can take a back seat. As the student gets older and the balancing continues, the balancing of factors continue, disruption to the class and lack of educational benefit are given more weight. So your best time to get your child started in general ed is in kindergarten. And to some extent, if you go into a special day class in kindergarten, it's going to be hard to get out of there, irrespective of what should happen. So that's just something to know. The idea's presumption in favor of mainstreaming requires that a disabled student be educated in a regular classroom if the student can receive a satisfactory education there, even if it is not the best educational setting for the child. Moreover, the determination of whether a child will make progress toward IEP goals must be made in the context of whether she will make progress if supplementary aids and services are offered to support the student in the regular classroom. Should I keep going?
We got 1 more minute. Do you think you can fit something in for 1 more minute?
The next question is, does the district have to provide aids and services to assist my child's integration? What if the district says that providing those aids and services is too expensive? Well, the answer is that's secretly what they're thinking in their heads, but they're not allowed to say it, and they're not supposed to be allowed to use that as a determinant of whether you need supplementary aids and services. The determining factor is if you have those supplementary aids and services, e.g., intensive ABA, therapy and supervision, will you be able to access the curriculum in the general ed environment? And that could be with the accommodations and modifications that we talked about before. So the law is the district must provide supplementary aids and services to accommodate the special education needs of students with disabilities in integrated environments. The court in Oberti versus Board of Education stated that a district must take meaningful steps to include students with disabilities in regular classrooms with supplementary aids and services. In another federal appellate court decision, Daniel R.R. versus El Paso Independent School District, the court said, the law does not permit states to make mere token gestures to accommodate handicapped students. Its requirement for modifying and supplementing regular education is broad. So maybe we should stop there.
Okay. All of that is so important because I think it's one of the biggest questions we get asked by parents is, that the school presumption is that they're going to go to a special day program, and sometimes that is an hour away. And parents want to know, how do I get to be in my homeschool with an aide in a gen ed classroom? And this is the path.
If you read the LRE chapter that I sent you, I think the reason it's so valuable is because what it's telling you is the default is general ed with supplementary aids and services. So that's what you should be offered, and if they aren't offering it, the burden is on them to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that there's some reason they can't accommodate you in general ed. And the other problem we have, and this is a sad topic, and I don't want to alienate people or be, not respectful of the efforts that professionals are making to educate our kids.
Sure.
But the notion that a special day class is going to be the appropriate environment for your child has to be looked at carefully.
Absolutely.
Because more often than not, the standards in a special ed class are low. And I'm sorry to say that because I wish it weren't true, but it is. So people like me are trying our darndest to keep people in general ed for as long as we can for that reason.
Okay. I absolutely agree. I concur. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Tell us again how we can get a hold of Hirji and Chow.
310-391-0330. There's been a little calm in the storm. If you're in Southern California and you want an intake, give us a call.
Okay.
If you need help and you're elsewhere, please send your questions in and refer to COPA. And thank everybody for listening.
Wonderful. And have a wonderful Memorial Day, Bonnie.
I shall.
All right.
You too.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Okay, we're taking a quick break, and then we are getting Jason from Spec Labs in to talk about SpecFest, so stick with us. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.